mil biglietto d'aereo. Non ho tempo, poi il treno ormai. Poco fa ho deciso, voglio andare a casa. Questa sera ho ricevuto una lettera. Non importa quanti soldi devo spendere, voglio partire al più presto.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to T25CL Galaxy Talk Radio. And I am your host, Rosalyn Jordan Mills, and welcome to Rosalyn's Corner. And like I always like to begin my show, always telling everyone about T25CL Entertainment. We are an innovative company that has established a global platform for pay-per-view distribution of independent music artists. And I always tell everyone, please go to our website at www.t25cl.com. View all the great artists whose music is available for download. And if you are an independent artist and you're looking to get your music out there on a global platform, T25CL Entertainment is the avenue to come for distribution. We have great artists who are under contract with us, performing at different places, but we have individuals who are very talented and a lot of upcoming artists who are on board as well. So look, if you're looking for distribution, come to T25CL, visit our website, listen to the great music, and purchase the great music from our artists. Okay, well, like I always like to say, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest tonight because my guest, wow, where do we begin? Okay, I think what we want to say when we start with our guests, because when we talk about their bio, they're such a great group of individuals who have started in the industry. And this group is a group of fellows who met in Vicenza, Italy in 1966 while serving in the Army. We sort of stumbled upon each other, is what they said, through casual singing. While one would be humming, the other would say, "Do you sing?" I think that's how a lot of groups start, you know. And then eventually a group was formed, and they performed on talent shows and always won, which finally led them to a professional career. Then they signed with RCA Italiana and launched into public performances throughout Europe. And for the past 16 years, they have reunited each year to return to the days of yesteryear, is what they say. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would love to introduce to you the Four Tenths. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Rosalyn.
You're so welcome. Welcome. Okay, Lou, let's start with you because what I do with all my individuals, my guests, we always want our listeners to know where and why did you begin singing and doing what you're doing, getting into the music industry. What was it that prompted you to do this? Tell us where your beginnings.
Yeah. Well, my beginnings were very early in life. In fact, it was at the age of 7 when and I have no clue where it came from because my mother couldn't sing, but my father did sing. I never saw him, but at the age of 7, I volunteered to perform on a talent show in elementary school. And my teacher had said, come up with whatever song you want to sing. And in my little mind, Elvis Presley had captured me. And so I chose to put on a performance as Elvis Presley. And by the way, I not only put on a performance singing Elvis's song, All Shook Up, but I had my mother to buy me a little ukulele, and I took a piece of cotton and rolled it up in a way that I could put black shoe polish on it, and I hung it on my head so that when I got to the closing part of the song, I could shake my head in that little curl that Elvis used to have. And I got to tell you, Rosalyn, I won the show, okay?
Oh, come on now.
And so that was really the beginning of, I think, music getting into my blood.
You were the Black Elvis.
I was the Black Elvis.
You were the Black Elvis. Very good. Well, let me, you know what? Yes. Yes, and what I want to do, I'm going to ask each individual, because everyone has their own life story, correct? And so what I want to do, let's start with George Chandler. George, tell our listening audience how you began.
Well, I began by listening to the radio, and I always enjoyed music, and I started singing. I started singing in my church choir when I was about 10, and formed my first group when I was 13. I went to a concert, and I saw Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers, and I decided, that's what I want to do. I want to be just like him.
A good man is that.
Yes, and I've been singing ever since.
You sang in the choir too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, in the choir. Anytime there was music, I always gravitated toward it.
That's phenomenal. How about Rudy? Let's get Rudy. Rudy Rollins. How did you start?
Well, mine is pretty similar to Lou's. I discovered at the age of 9 that I could sing by accident. At that time, all kids had high voices. It's 9 of us. And my cousin, she sung higher than anybody. And somewhere I heard this note that struck my ear, and I sung between her and the rest of the kids. And my aunt said, "You have a nice voice." And, of course, that inspired me. At the age of 12, I was in my first group, and it's been a singing adventure ever since. And I also lived, I don't know if you're familiar with a brother named Hoagie Lands. He made some records back in the day. I grew up next to him, listening to him, and every corner had a group, and I've been singing ever since.
Wow, that is so phenomenal. And, ladies and gentlemen, we are on T25CL.com. If you want to log in, everyone call in. I see we've got callers logged in already. But I do have my co-host, Andre Ward. Andre Ward is CEO of T25CL Entertainment. Andre, say hello to everyone.
Hello to everyone. How are you guys doing? Hey. But I had one question for George, though. Something he said was quite intriguing. He said that he just woke up one day and said, "Hey, I want to be a singer." Now, I can't sing one note. I would like to know, can I just get up tomorrow and say, "Hey, I want to be a singer," and actually learn how to be a singer? I mean, I find that quite intriguing that you can just get up one day and say, "Hey, I want to be a singer," and you start doing it. How does one do something like that?
Well, I think that first comes the love of music, and after that, you just go for it, you know. And some people have the talent, and other people, like yourself, don't.
Yeah, I love music. I have no talent whatsoever, but I love music. In the music business, can't sing, can't dance, can't do any of it.
Well, they say you could just sing in the shower. That'll get it.
Well, Andre.
Yes, sir.
This is Lou Phillips. What you can do is start an entertainment company and make it convenient for those who can entertain, come to you and entertain, right?
You know what? That's a pretty good idea. Let's start an entertainment company here, and let's get a whole bunch of these guys who know what they're doing, bring them on board, and maybe I can learn by osmosis some type of way.
There you go. There you got it.
But wait a minute, what does T25CL do? Oh, crap, we're an entertainment company. I've done it already.
Hello.
You're already in it.
Already.
Exactly.
Hey, Ron.
How about Bill? Yes.
No, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, well, we want to hear from Bill Gaddis.
Oh, well, I'm the plus one in the group. We met, as you said earlier, we met in Vicenza, Italy. I was doing photography. I was a photographer before I went into the Army. So when I got there, I had my little camera everywhere I went, and I was following the Kents because I fell in love with the music, and I thought they were the best around. I mean, they sounded to me as good as the Four Tops, Temptations. I just thought they were fabulous. So everywhere they went to sing, I followed them. I had a little car, and I had a way of getting around, so I followed them everywhere they went. And I kind of posed myself on them. So everywhere they went, I'd show up. And when I got out of the Army, I came back to the States. And every now and then, I would get on the plane and fly back over there and I'd just walk into the room no matter where they were. I wouldn't tell them I was coming. So I'd walk in the room, and there I was, and then somebody would holler, Leroy! that was my nickname, they called me. And it was a fabulous experience from then on, so I've been following them ever since.
Rosalyn, this is Lou Phillips again. I just want to add one caveat to this, and that is one of the Kents it isn't with us because he's still in Italy and still working. So his name is Charles Cannon, by the way, and just so you'll know.
Okay, and very good.
That's all I need.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine because I know that I was looking at his bio as well. His home team. He's an Alabama boy.
That's right.
Born in Alabama. Yeah, that's phenomenal. But well, how was his participation? How did he join the group?
Who encountered Cannon and invited him to join the group?
I think more or less we all did. We found out that he could sing, and he would come to rehearsals. So we said, "You're in."
So that's basically it. And by the way, Charles Cannon is a classically trained singer. He by the time he got to the military, he was already qualified and bona fide as a singer from the South. Okay.
Singer from the South. That is phenomenal. Well, let me ask you, each of you gentlemen, because you all grew up in an era where the issues of race, the issues of everything that we all went through. Well, maybe I didn't, but I did. We all went through in those early years because I look here and Bill, you had gotten a scholarship from Tuskegee Institute. And your education that you have was phenomenal. And tell us about your times, even at Tuskegee and getting your education, growing up in that era.
Well, I was an honor student. I was always the class leader, and I always talked a lot, so I had the ear of the teachers, and I kind of had a few that I admired. And so they kind of took a liking to me and told me what classes I had to take. I won the high school mathematical award when I was in the 9th grade as the best mathematician in the school. So from that, I got a scholarship to Tuskegee, and I was supposed to major in architecture. But due to the family structure in my family, my sister came. She was in Chicago because when you graduate from a school in Talladega County Training School in Talladega, Alabama. We lived on a farm, so there was nothing to do once you graduate, so you left and went north. My sister had gone to Chicago, and as I went to school in my 12th grade, my sister came down the second day school had started and told us we need to move to Chicago. Packed us up, and I drove a car, 55 Ford, with a trailer behind it, went to Chicago. I graduated from high school in Chicago, but the teachers there would not allow me to take any math. They said, you have too much math. And, I guess they, white teachers then. In Talladega County Training School, they were all black. The black teachers looked out for you. They kind of told you, they nurtured you, and they directed you. But in Chicago, being black, no matter how much math you had, how good you were, they didn't recommend you go to any kind of school like that. And I found out later that we had what we call Math and Science Institutes, which is where I should go. I didn't know it then, but I didn't go because they didn't suggest that I go. So I ended up with art. I was good at art, and I sang in the choir, and I enjoyed singing. So I had a good voice. I was lead tenor, but I also had a vocal cord problem. So when I go out at night while they were smoking cigarettes, and I have a few drinks, the next morning I couldn't talk. So I knew singing was not going to do it for me. So I took the art route of becoming a photographer. I used to shoot pictures for all of the stuff you see in the catalogs. Montgomery Ward was one at the time, Sears, Spiegels, and all of those, Aldens. And so when I worked as a professional photographer, obviously, and when I got to the military, when they drafted me reluctantly, I went over and I asked to be the photographer for the Stars and Stripes in Europe. And but as far as the Tuskegee Institute, I did not go because I left Alabama and went to Chicago and graduated, and I couldn't follow up on my math, so I ended up getting my degree in journalism. I graduated from Columbia College. I also had a professor status in journalism at Michigan State University, where I was producer director for radio and TV for a couple of years. And then I wanted to go back to Europe with the Kents when I left the Army. I said, now I'm going to go back over to Europe and take pictures and write articles. So I wanted to help promote them. And so, but, after a while, I got interested in television, and I ended up never going back to Italy to stay. I just kind of went over and visited all the time.
And Rosalyn, I tell you, his pictures are fantastic. Back then, they were fantastic.
I enjoy.
They still are.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
I had visions of being working for National Geographic after that. So, but life kind of takes you. It's like a river. You just kind of flow in the direction of least resistance. That's pretty much what I did.
Exactly.
I always followed the Kents because I always loved their music, and I still do to this day.
That is so awesome. That is awesome. Well, let me ask Mr. Rudy Rollins, because, I'm looking at this and were all of you brought up in the church?
Yes, I was. Rudy, this is Rudy. Yes, I was. My uncle was.
You started. Yeah. Now you had a family member who made you get in that choir.
Yeah, my kind of like Bill. I migrated from Louisiana at an early age, and my mother's brother was a minister, and of course I had to do the church thing. That's how I got into it.
Yeah. But sometimes I think a lot of us, a lot of your great singers, great musicians, people are raised in the church. They come out of those church choirs, I think at that time you had a lot of support, and it was family oriented, and your grandma was there to hit you in the back of your head to make sure you was doing right in the church. I remember those times, But I think what I want to ask, and Chief, you can jump in here as well. But what I wanted to do, because I've got a caller online, and I'm going to bring them forward and see who this is. Okay, caller, give us your name and where you're calling in from.
My name is Clarence Bass, and I'm calling in from St. Louis, Missouri.
Wow. Awesome. Well, welcome, sir. Welcome. And evidently everybody knows you.
Yeah, I was waiting on somebody to give me a shout-out, but they didn't.
Hey, Roz?
Yes, sir.
There was one thing I forgot to bring up shortly after I spoke to you about Charles Cannon.
Yes, sir.
There is one other member that filled in with the group at one point. What was this, like about 1967?
Well, what happened was Boom couldn't get out of the Army. He had another year to do in the Army, Charles Cannon did, and we had to get a replacement. And Clarence Bass joined us and worked with us for a year until Boom got out of the Army.
So there is one other person that I failed to mention, and by the way, his name is Clarence Bass.
All right, now. the only non-singer in the group.
Hey,
now, are there any more out there hiding somewhere?
Right. Rosalyn?
Yes, sir.
You heard him say that he was the only non-singer in the group? But he could sure wear those oversized suits.
Hey, Rosalyn, this is Rudy. Clarence Bass' legacy is he was the best pantomizer in the business. He knew every routine, every snap, every crackle and pop, but never said one word, except my girl. That's the truth.
Oh, my goodness. That's phenomenal. And, and this is for all of you, because everyone has a story. Everyone has a story to tell through your experiences. And just tell our listening audience, what are your fondest musical memories? Because we all have so many and so many performances and everything that we've done, that you have done in your life. There is always something that stands out that is so unforgettable that it could have happened 20 years ago, but it still is a fond memory in your mind right now. So I'm going to start with Bill. Bill, what is your fondest memory?
My fondest memory is traveling down to, we left a town called Vicenza, and then we were riding from Vicenza to Finale Ligure, and that was a long ways, and it was along the French Riviera, and the roads were kind of rocky and rough. I mean, cliffs were deep and steep and stiff, and so I decided that rather than ride in the van with the rest of the guys in the back, it was so scary to me, I said, I'm going to drive this van. So I remember driving all day until we got to Finale Ligure, and they did a concert down near the French Riviera, and that was one of the highlights because it was such a beautiful place, and the music and the town was so wonderful. I had never been to France before, and that was an introduction of France to me that I'll never forget.
Hey, Rosalyn, this is Lou Phillips again. Did you did Clarence Bass get off the line?
No, I'm still on.
No, he's still there.
Okay. Before we get his question, there's one other group member here who has a remembrance that I think you ought to hear. His name is Stanley Evans.
Hey, but first of all, my best remembrance of us as a group is when we won the talent show in the United States Army. It just blew my mind, how we prepared and how we succeeded. That's my memory of that, And as far as what got me into the business, 5 years old, and when I was 10, I saw Frank Lyman and the Teenagers, and I knew then that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an entertainer, and I worked at it.
That's phenomenal. Well, let me ask you something. Of all you gentlemen, do you speak Italiano?
I do. Sì, molto bene. Molto.
Oh, wow. That is so cool. So cool. Okay.
Bass speaks it as well.
I speak a little. I know about 50 words.
Sure. Well, let's go to Rudy. Rudy, tell us your fondest memories.
It was more funny than fondest. It was the first record we did was a cover version of Brenton Wood, Give Me a Little Sign. And now mind you, none of us spoke Italian. So we learned the song backwards. I mean, we literally learned it backwards. And then we was told to say each syllable in Italian. Now mind you, back in those days, there was no such thing as digital. You would say, Io ti do mando, which is, if you don't want me, after 27 takes. And they played it back. We had sung this perfect song in Italian and had no idea what we were saying. That was a very fond and funny memory. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. Well, how about you, Lou? Because you can tell us.
Yeah, my fondest memory was when I was with the group, we had a show to put on in a town by the name of, on the coast of Italy, Portofino. And as we were driving into the city, it was dusk, getting close to dark, and it was the most breathtaking sight I've ever seen in my life. And we performed right along the main drag, which had as a backdrop the Atlantic Ocean. It was just magnificent. I still vividly remember the statue on top of that mountain that looked like Christ the Redeemer in Rio. That was so. That's my greatest memory, and it stuck with me as being a fond memory because of the impact it had on me. And I've since gone back to Portofino, and I've talked to a number of other folks. And you guys remember, the harbor was filled with yachts.
Yes.
So it wasn't a cheap place to go.
Well, that is phenomenal. But, you think about you're singing, all of you sing, and we've got to listen. We got to have our listening audience hear you guys sing. But the question was posed is, all of you were singers. Who played the music?
Well, this is George. We had a band who accompanied us called the Submarines, and they were in the Army as well, and they took overseas discharges. And we also had an Italian drummer, and so everywhere we went to perform, we had our own band. So we were like a self-contained unit.
Very good, very good. Well, you know what? This is another question because I'm thinking about when all of you were performing over in Italy and in a different, over there in Europe, just doing what you do best. But I know in the Army and all the armed forces, African Americans faced a lot of racial prejudice. And tell my listening audience, because I know you probably have faced that when you were in the Army. Did you face that when you were in the Army as well as trying to perform in different cities?
This is George again. While we were in the Army, we only faced, there was a sergeant who was in charge of the enlisted men's club, and he would not allow us to play enlisted men's club.
Radio.
And so we decided we would do gigs for in a city that was near Vicenza, so that enlisted men could come and hear us. That was probably the only racist thing that we encountered while we were in the Army, as far as our singing was concerned.
Well, Rosalyn, one of the things that Kent's had an advantage was in influencing other people without saying a word, because the post general kind of endorsed the singing and traveling activities of the group. So it became a non-issue based on the fact that people just totally accepted the group. And while we were in the Army, it was also undergirded by the fact that the commanding general loved it.
That is phenomenal. I mean, how about it? Because I think about that because you're performing over in Europe, and I think for a lot of our listening audience, when we look at a lot of Army movies and Army documentaries and things, that how the African American has really gone through hard times, even the Tuskegee Airmen, how they went through hard times. I mean, they had to make their names known, in the Air Force. Was it easier performing in Europe? Did you come over here to perform in the United States?
This is Rudy. No, we never had a chance to perform in America. We did just primarily Europe.
And I suppose the opportunities to get into the business was found to be easier in Europe than it would have been in the U.S. And you can validate that by virtue of the fact that so many African Americans did so well in Europe over the years. I mean, it didn't just happen over the past 15, 20 years. Go back to the 30s and earlier, right, Joy?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the premier vocal groups was the Golden Gate Quartet, and they moved to France in the early 50s because the music had changed and Jubilee singing was going out and hard gospel singing was coming in, and they moved to France, and as far as I know, they are still performing today, obviously with different members, but Europe offered soloists to a lot of jazz artists as well who moved to Europe and found success.
Well, that would be another question I would pose to you, because you always attract sometimes a certain group of people. I mean, if you're a phenomenal group, which I'm sure you were, what genre of music did you sing? Jazz, R&B?
We sang a little bit of everything. We didn't sing jazz.
Everything?
This is Stan Evans.
I understand. Go ahead.
We sang a lot of R&B and pop music, and we did a lot of cover versions of hits that were released in Italy. That's what RCA used to do.
Very good, very good.
Let me ask you guys this is Andre talking. Did you guys ever have any desire to come to the States to tour in different cities, different states, different venues here? Or was it just you found your niche there in Europe and decided not to venture outside of that niche?
No, we wanted to do it.
Okay, what stopped you?
There were a lot of different obstacles stopping us from doing that. We signed a contract with RCA stating that they would write all the songs for us and arrange them. All we had to do was sing them. So there's a lot of issues. And it sounds as if the whole process restricted them to performing in Italy because it was the Italian division of RCA, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think the repertoire was broader than just soul music because, you know, there were a lot of show tune performances and a lot of even some gospel kind of renditions that were done, maybe not as part of the requirement on the part of RCA, but in the repertoire that was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what type of venues did you perform at, you know, outside of maybe Army shows or something like that? Did you play in larger venues or nightclubs? And also, did you perform with other artists? Did you open up for other artists, or did other artists open up for you?
Well, this is Rudy. We did a variety of things, from small clubs to major venues such as Monte Carlo, where they had Eurovision, which at that time was being shown all over the world. We played in some very exclusive Italian nightclubs with very upscale people. RNF Cafe, for example, was one of the places. And as mentioned, our repertoire was so large, and I think we had a large repertoire that extended, I mean, from Frank Sinatra to a typical Italian traditional song. So our repertoire, in a sense, was very vast. Like I said, we played everywhere.
And then what year was that when you signed with RCA? What year was that?
1967, when we got out of the Army.
Okay. And how did, in 67, how did they promote selling your albums back then?
Well, the usual way. I mean, we did television shows and personal appearances.
Okay.
And also, Andre, if I can just add something, the group performed with many of the very top artists in Italy, and so the visibility, access, and penetration of the group as a professional, high-end entertainment production was evident throughout Italy.
Okay.
I would just like to add too. I had worked in. This is Bill Gaddis. I had worked in some radio and TV and worked with a lot of the disc jockeys in the States, and there was a vast difference in how they promoted music in the States versus how it was done over in Europe. In the States, we had, you know, I don't know if you are familiar with payola, but a lot of times the record companies would put money into radio station program directors and get their records on the air that way. It wasn't done that way at all in Italy. They primarily did live performances, and they were written up in magazine articles, and they became they would mix and mingle with a lot of the other stars, and that's how they kind of got publicity. And then, of course, then their records would get played over there on radio and be seen on TV. And that was more or less the difference between how they promoted it in America versus how it was done in Europe.
Now, does RCA still own your catalog, or did you retain ownership after your contract is up, or are you still under contract with RCA?
No, we're not under contract with RCA, and RCA does own the rights to all of our recorded work.
How can you get it back? or do you want it back, or do you want to stay inside the confines of RCA?
Well, the Four Kents stopped singing about 1972.
Mm-hmm.
So since 1972, we've all gone on to do other things in the music business and outside of the music business.
Okay, so RCA, they still distribute it, and you still would get royalties off of it if RCA is still selling your music?
Yes, if they are still selling the music, but I don't think they are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, can you actually go out here and do remakes of that music and re-record it if you so desired?
I think we could, but I don't think that's liable to happen at this stage in our lives.
Mm-hmm. But what if you wanted to groom someone up that in your likeness or something like that? If you wanted to bring that type of music back in 2014, you would have the permission to replicate that music. Huh?
That ain't gonna happen because no, it's not gonna happen. This is Stan Evans. This is not gonna happen because the music business changed. It's changed. The music you hear now. Now let's go back. The music you hear, you got boy bands and vocal groups. Back in the day, it was vocal groups. Vocal groups sang, but they didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have a band. They had to have a backup band. But today's youth, they call them boy bands. Not only can they sing, they can play.
Mm-hmm.
So that era that we grew up in is gone forever. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
And also, this is Lou, the type of music that from a listening standpoint has completely changed as well. Yeah. And so therefore, that 1960s kind of music, you may take the lyrics and the music pattern and upgrade it to some degree, but it would have to end up not sounding anything like it sounded back in that time.
Andre, this is Rudy. And also that we lived through a time where it's like every generation, something ushers in and ushers out. What we do is not common practice anymore. We could sit down, just the four of us, and just sing. That's what starts it. You don't have youth today, first of all, as a youth who could sit down 4 or 5 guys and get together and do that with love and a desire for it, because today the youth are more individual, and that kind of a group singing, a group setting is not commonplace today. Not anymore.
So when you guys came out there, and you were probably right before the Temptations, the OJs, the Ohio Players.
No, not really. This is Rudy again. Actually, the Temptations was part of our early idols.
Mm-hmm.
Still at the same time.
And the other groups you named were many years later.
Yeah.
The Ohio Players and those guys, they were much later after the Temptations had become, worldwide hit makers. And
yes. Yeah, and groups like them, Ohio Players, and maybe I think it might have been Earth, Wind, and Fire. Those guys were predominantly musicians, and then all the musicians would sing along, with the exception of maybe one lead singer who was also a musician.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
true.
think, and that did kind of set a trend going forward. There's a few more like them. I think, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and what's the other group?
Commodores, Earth, Wind, and Fire,
Lakeside.
Lakeside, and Summer Madness. What's the name of the group that did Summer Madness?
Cool in the Gang.
Cool in the Gang. Yeah.
The Barcades, the list goes on with that. Yeah.
Now, would you say that type of music now, would that be a dying art and it can't be replicated ever again? And now that this hip-hop generation has stepped forward, that is sort of like the mainstream with hip-hop and pop and maybe R&B, but predominantly I think that the market is going towards the youngsters, the teenagers to the 20-year-olds to the 30-year-olds. Is that primarily where music is now?
Okay, this is George. In fact, It's always been like that. It was like that when we were growing up. When we were growing up, it was doo-wop time. This is in the 50s. So the music, pop music, has always been geared to the young.
So people that may be 50, 60, 70, then that would be more or less like the classical type music then?
I didn't understand. You say again?
As we got older, maybe 50, 60, 70 years old, then that would be more classical type music and not necessarily the R&B or the pop or the jazz.
Well, this is Lou again. I'm a complete neophyte now as relates to the industry, but my feeling is that the music is going to go, and the record companies or whoever is running the business is going to go to where the largest market opportunities are, and also to the place where the market has the widest, where they have the greatest ability to change minds and influence buying decisions. And that's always going to be the younger generation. And there comes a point, it's sad to say, but because we're living it right now, where you don't matter.
Right.
And the age group you're talking about now, as it relates to making big money in the music industry, it falls into that category. You know, you're important, but you're not, you don't really matter.
Yep, and you're absolutely right, because we talk about that on the shows quite frequently, that when the hip-hop generation started 20 years or so ago, when that started, it was all underground, and these rappers and stuff were selling their CDs out of the trunk of their cars. And next thing you know, it started to build a humongous underground economy. And the word got out to the industry, hey, we got to bring that underground above ground because there's too much money out there. Right. And that's when the industry grabbed a hold of these guys and made stars out of a few of them. But they had to bring that money from the underground to the surface. It's not necessarily that they liked the music, but it was making money.
Well, that's
and so they had to bring it to the surface.
This is George again. That's the same thing that happens. History repeats itself musically. That's the same thing that happened when we were growing up. We grew up during the time of the invention of rock and roll. And the early rock and roll artists, like Fats Domino, for example, was doing R&B. He was doing the same music, but they put a label on it, and they called it rock and roll. The music business has been doing that since time immemorial. We had jazz, and then we had bebop. You know what I mean? They give music a different name so they can sell it. And so that's what's happening with hip hop. They gave it a name, and it's the current thing that is happening, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, let me ask you this: is jazz dead as a money maker? And if it is, can it make a comeback? And if so, how?
I don't think jazz is dead. Do you?
As a money maker. As a money maker.
I'm in an age group now where most of my friends in their 70s and 80s, and there'll always be some 70 and 80 people. And when you get older, like I used to love to dance. When the Kents were singing, I would follow them and I would just dance all night. That's what I love to do. But now that I'm 70, I look like a fool dancing, fast dancing like I used to. So when we get older, we kind of rev it back down to a slower pace of music, and then we go back to our roots, which was jazz. Now my group of people love to go to jazz shows. In fact, I was at one last week. That's what we cater to now. So as far as it's my experience as paying out, jazz is more attractive to me now than it used to be. When I was young, of course, I was into R&B a lot because I could dance, and I love to dance. But now I don't want to dance, don't feel like it, don't think I should as much as I used to. Dancing I do now is slow. So jazz fits that genre of music.
And
real good.
And part of your question about jazz coming back, the song that was recorded 20 years ago as a jazz tune can and most often do reemerge as some other kind of music genre.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you get the sound, the music patterns, and all of that of Billie Holiday today, but it'll sound like it could be a hip hopper doing it, you know, to appeal to that broad audience, which is much younger. And that'll cause us to, and George mentioned the thing about what life was like when we grew up. It's the same thing for us now. If we were to hear an old jazz tune that was sung by a Billie Holiday or someone being produced as a hip hop artist, we would go, "What in the world is that?"
Mm-hmm. But as far as being a moneymaker, I don't think jazz has ever been a big moneymaker, except when they had ballroom dances and, you know, people like big band music. That era, it'll never be to the point where it can compete with R&B, but I don't think it'll ever completely go away.
Yeah.
Or compete with contemporary music of any kind.
All right.
Yeah, I just mentioned jazz and hip hop. I always ask the jazz artists this: do you think that jazz and hip hop could collaborate? Do you think that could make musical sense to the mindset and the ear? What do all of you guys think about that?
Oh, this is Stan Evans. I think it can happen. I heard Carlos Santana do something like that, and he had a couple of rappers, and it sounded great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it can happen.
And this is Bill Gaddis. I think he's right, and I've experienced some of that, and I like a mixture of it myself. I love jazz, I love hip hop, I love R&B, and there are some tunes that I really want to hear in each of those categories, and I love to hear it especially when I can see it live.
This is Rudy. There have been quite a few artists who have fused jazz music, rap artists rather, has fused a line or two or melody into their music. The problem is the audience they're playing to actually think it's an original piece. Kanye West did this is Forbidden Fruit, the Billie Holiday song about hanging. He sampled that into one of his songs. Unless you know who Billie Holiday is, anything about that song, it's oblivious to the kids. They just think it's
brand new.
Okay, so it comes back as
jazz is for music. Music is just fuses, and I think the only thing that changed in music, it was two things. It's storylines. The storylines the kids are talking are not something I want to hear. And the other thing is electronics. You don't need a 5-piece band. You need two guys and a boom. And that's it. And you can do everything you want to do. So, I'm trying to answer your question. No, jazz will be here. Jazz is probably the only music that America has. It is American.
Yeah. I remember James Brown did something with that opera singer. What was his name? Was it Pavarotti? Pavarotti.
Right.
Yeah, and it was pretty nice. It's a nice video, and I mean, it's online, and they did a damn good job together.
It did.
And I think that there should be more of a collaboration with cultures crossing over with one another and doing a combination of the music. One, it makes sense economically because it makes money. And two, it gives cultures a chance to appreciate other cultures that they may not be familiar with, but you bring them into a degree of familiarity with their own. And I just think that there should be a little bit more of that, even if it was country and western in jazz or country and western in hip-hop. If you start doing some crossing over this stuff.
Did you see Natalie Cole collaboration with the Three Tenors?
Yeah, no, I didn't see it.
That was to me, I'll never forget, that was one of the most unforgettable performances I have ever seen. And Natalie Cole absolutely knocked that thing out of the box. And all the Pavarotti and the guy from Spain and another one. And it's one of the most beautiful performances I've ever seen. And she was as good as any opera singer I ever seen. She was fantastic. So that collaboration supports what you just said.
Oh, yeah. And one thing I do know, because one of our associates down in Southern California that is working along with us, he wants us to take our artists offshore. He likes going over to China and to Europe because you can take our artists here that might only attract 300 to 400 people in a venue, but when you take them across the pond, you can get several thousands of people to come out to the concert. A friend of mine who's a drummer, Gladys Knight drummer, he produces a group over in Japan. And when they perform, it's 100,000 people coming to the show.
Mm.
Yes. And so I just think that, I think you guys have proved it too, you saw it yourself when you had your humble beginnings there in Europe. It seems as though that there's more of appreciation for this American music abroad. I mean, Michael Jackson proved that too. That's where his market was. And same thing with Janet Jackson. When they go abroad, they generate tens of thousands of people. Versus here, you don't get that.
Yep, that's true.
Yep. So I think that you guys were onto something back then.
Well, one of the things too, at least from my perspective, when they start having these reality shows, these The Voice and all these singing shows, one of the things you discovered is the vast amount of influence that American music has had on people. I mean, some of these, I saw a Japanese girl one night. I don't know where she come from. She sounded like Natalie Cole. Now, you don't get that in Japan. So the love of our music will always be the property, dominant music, because we have a lot of freedoms of expression. Other countries have traditions. They have a traditional sound, a traditional approach. But America brings about this constantly change, and it attracts the world. I mean, the world is like a magnet. It just gravitates to it. So it's no wonder why when we go overseas, people want to hear it, because the only way they're going to hear it is we bring it to them.
Yes, because what I've heard, because probably Luke could probably be a testimony of that when he was impersonating Elvis Presley. But Elvis Presley, from what I heard, got his talent from, who was that, Chuck Berry, I believe. Is that true?
Lou, Jackie Wilson, he got it. So it was a reverse exchange, I would say.
Yeah.
He'd been influenced by a whole lot of people, and he influenced me, which didn't last my entire life, okay? I'm sure.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, this is George again. The early rock and roll singers, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Gene Vincent, they all come out of church.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They all come out of church. And it was the white tradition combined with the black tradition that created what they call rock and roll. And that scared everybody in the music business at the time. And so about 4 or 5 years after it, they stopped using the term rock and roll so much, and they started using the term rock. And rock is a word which means white people.
Now, what does enroll mean? What does that mean, the enroll?
Did you hear that last part, Andre?
What does the enroll mean?
What does what?
If you have rock and roll, what does the enroll mean?
What does rock and roll mean? What is it?
It was a made-up word, just like hip-hop, just like disco. Yeah. I've been telling you that the music business gives labels everything so that it seems new to the younger generation. My kids don't want to dance to what the songs that I grew up with. They want their own music, just like we wanted our own music. And that's why we had rock and roll. It was just a title.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. So I guess, Andre, what he was saying was that he wasn't trying to explain the genealogy of the word rock and roll by saying that rock spun off and became a designation for white singers. Okay. I mean, that's just the way it unfolded.
Yeah.
Okay, I see where you're going with it now. Rock spun off from the rock and roll, the word itself, and was more or less for the white audience with rock music. Then. Okay, I got you.
Right. I mean, until Jimi Hendrix came along.
That's right. Until Jimi Hendrix came along, rock was considered white artists. You know what I mean? Because it scared them to death when white people and black people were coming together and enjoying the same music. It scared them to death. And what they always do, they segregated it.
Yeah. And you know how they did radio when they start labeling black music as soul music. And they had stations in the radio business. They had stations that played soul music, so that the audience would be mostly the music would be presented mostly to the black audience. And MOR stations is where they put most of the they call it middle of the road stations. Is where they put most of the white audiences, white musicians, the groups. And that was a way of making sure that those sales of somebody like Sam Cooke didn't reach the mass audience and become a multi-million-dollar superstar. And that's how they kind of kept you in check. So when they classified soul stations versus MOR stations, that was a big stumbling block for black artists.
Yeah. And that may still be true today. Stanley, you have a studio and produce artists.
Yeah, I produce artists, but I produce local artists. That's what I do. I got produce any type of music, but basically it's gospel. And, there's some fantastic talent in South Carolina. Fantastic talent. But they ain't going nowhere, and a lot of times they don't know anything about the business. They don't know about publishing and how to write. They don't know how to balance the music. They don't know anything. But they can sing. So I provide a service, try to teach them certain things about the business. And if you really want to know about the business, and I'm telling everybody who's listening to this station, especially you young people, get you some books, learn about it. Don't be a dummy. That's all I can tell you. Don't be a dummy. Learn about your craft and practice your craft.
Now, go ahead, Russell. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because I want to just kind of spin off from that with music and moods. Since we're on internet radio, we can really kind of cross the line with some of this stuff. When you hear nice, soft music, nice jazz music, or I don't care if it's even a symphony, it may put you in a relaxed state of mind or a romantic state of mind. But when you get more guitar orientated, when you're hitting high amplified notes, and when you call that genre rock or hard rock or acid rock, and now you see people doing demonic type behavior, blood sacrifices, all this other makeup and stuff, would you say that music is a control of the emotion and the spirit, that it can control you one way or the other? Music can bring you peace, or music can bring about demonic behavior and make you do very, very mean and nasty things. Is music a controlling element of the spirit and the soul?
This is George again. I had a conversation with a friend of mine once, and he was talking about good music and bad music. And I told him, and I'm going to tell you, in my view, there's only two kinds of music. Music you like and music you don't like.
Now, just so to fill in the silence here, this is Lou. One thing that I observed in a piece that was recently placed on the internet, and it was a piece that had a mother sitting with her baby, which was about, 6 months, 8 months old, on her lap. Mm-hmm. And she began to sing to that baby a song. And as she began to sing the song, it had a very happy part, and the child was really engaged in it. And then it got to a sad part. And the words and the sound that was coming out of her mouth conveyed the sadness of the words. And the baby started crying.
Sure did.
So I think that there is an emotional, psychological impact through music to individuals. That's why people become sedated in some way in concerts that are very mellow kind of music. And when you go to those concerts that are rough and rowdy and music is loud and fast going and they're jumping all over each other, and that's all driven by the music. That's my opinion. It also, it has a lot to do. You only go to those concerts because you like the music, and you don't go to the ones that you don't like. But once you're there and once you engage with music, there's something to the saying that the music has the power to soothe the soul of a savage beast.
In fact, that kind of reminds me of a true story. We were driving to Texas to a family reunion one time, and my cousin, he was young at the time. I think he was probably about 17, 18. He was driving, me, him, and his father. And so he was listening to some hip-hop music. Now, it was driving us nuts, but he was listening to it, and he was going over the speed limit. He was swerving and all this sort of stuff. And I told his father, change the music. Put on some nice R&B. And he did. He put in a CD. And next thing you know, he began to drive straight. He wasn't crossing the lines. He didn't go over the speed limit. And that's a true story. It is very true. It actually happened, whereas this music that he was listening to was causing him to drive erratically. But when you changed it, he was driving straight, right there in the lane, no problem.
Well, when they used to have those basement parties, red light, blue lights, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There was a time during the night when all you would hear would be slow music and soft music, right?
Oh, and, man, yeah.
I'm a Baptist preacher now. I'm trying not to remember those times, but
oh, yeah.
That was laying down a predicate for something, wasn't it?
That's right. You remember the time?
Well, that was one thing I find very, very exciting about internet radio, and I think it might be one of the greatest vehicles to eliminate the segregation of how music is distributed or presented to the vast people, especially in America, because America has a way of segregating who is likely to hear certain artists play music. I think the internet might be your network might be the vehicle that might break down that barrier finally. And I think that would be the best thing that ever happened to music, because it would be very difficult for anyone to regulate or decide who this is. And you have an opportunity, I believe, to break down all those barriers, because when you put something on the internet, it's open to everybody, no matter what type of music it is. And I think that can only be beneficial, especially to black artists who have been oftentimes shut out from that majority market in America until their music reaches Europe, and one of those European artists bring it back over here and sing it about as half as good as the black American did and reap millions of dollars when they re-release a black artist's music through one of those European singers who learned it from the black artist in the first place. So I think you have a tremendous opportunity, and I hope I'm glad to see you doing that, and I hope you can take advantage of it.
Oh, yes, we definitely are, because you're right on the money with what you just said. Because my artists are just great. I mean, just top of the line, just great. Now, they may not be household names all over the world, but they can stand up to anybody. But if you put them in a 1,500-seat auditorium, they may not sell a lot of tickets. But if you combine them with a Mexican group, sort of like the Escobedos or Joe Baton or something like that, and you do a collaboration with the two, they'll sell the building out.
Right.
And so the thing that I was expressing to you, yes, we sampled it last year, and we're going to sample it again this year with a show called Latin with a Touch of Soul.
Latin jazz with a taste of soul.
Say that again.
Latin jazz with a taste of soul.
Latin jazz with a taste of soul. And just kind of just sampling it out there in the Mexican community. They say, oh, man, if you do that, yeah, you don't have nothing to worry about. You'll sell out. We'll help you market. We'll help you. But that's what we have to do nowadays. You have to be creative with music, and you just got to do some things to appease the marketplace and your audience, because that's what you're going to be selling tickets to. And then that's where you're going to be going to your aftermarket with your products when you shoot it and make film shorts out of it. And so we have to be very creative. So you're absolutely right, and we're definitely going in that direction with T25CL.
And I think if you were to direct some of it to China, the Chinese love trying to do the Black American music. They love it. And I think, and that's the biggest audience in the world. So I think you have some great potential if you can incorporate some black music with them, because they can sing that black music just like black people can, and they love it. So, I hope you can.
Sure.
That's phenomenal. Yes, this has been this has been a great show. I'm enjoying every moment, because you think about the rich history that you gentlemen have in the music industry. But before we end our show, because when Miss Barbara's getting ready to come on, we want to know, I want each of you just give some parting words for our listening audience with your experience and what you can tell this generation about the music, their creativity, and how they should influence the world on a positive note. Because it was just like Andre was saying, the mood of the music, the creativity of the music, and what an artist or a musician is thinking of when they create this music, how it's so influential to the listener. So I want each of you to give our listening audience your take on this generation and the generations to come. We'll start with you, Lou.
Hey, Roz, I don't mean to kind of guide the show, but can we start with Clarence?
You sure can.
I missed the question, man. I was so deep engrossed in what y'all was talking about.
Okay,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, I'll start it off, and that'll give him some indication of where it's going. I think the artists of today, and again, I have no connection to the music business now. I listen to music and I observe it on television and that kind of thing. So this is not a speaking from direct experience, just from observation and other things that I know. Be dedicated to what you do. Understand the business nature associated with what you are pursuing, and make sure that you surround yourself with people who care about the eventual outcome of the person, and not so much about how much money you can make. Just be careful that you surround yourself with right people and have ownership of all that you do.
Very well said. Okay, let's go on to, so Clarence, you understand the question?
I kind of understand it, but I really didn't, but let me hear some more.
Well, go ahead. Let's hear from Rudy.
Just to piggyback off Lou, because I am a retired barber, so I had a lot of kids, young folks coming to the shop who know I sing and asking me about the business. And the first thing I tell them is that to buy a book is called This Business of Music. It's probably the encyclopedia of the music world. And what it does, it gives you all of the basic business approaches to the business, from copyright, publishing, owning your publishing, distribution, and the whole 9 yards. So you can become your sole proprietor of your craft, because you are an independent proposition in this business. The second thing I tell them is, it is probably one of the hardest professions in the world to escape its vices. Because once you go into that world, every inconceivable vice that you can think of is there. And so you have to have some measure of God in your life, some measure of morality in your life, and a whole bunch of other goodies, if you want to use the proper word, to protect you from that. Otherwise, it will devour you. And if you don't believe me, I tell them, do the math with the statistics of artists who have early demise and so forth and so on. Money, bankruptcy, and all of that.
And drugs.
And drugs.
Wow, yes, yes. How about you, Bill?
Well, I have my oldest son was a musician. I put him in school and had him taking lessons when he was 5 years old. He plays piano, guitar, blows the sax. He put out 2 albums. I paid for the production of them, called Dogtown, when he was in college. And he got, and I had told him, if you ever get on drugs, I don't want to see you no more. Don't take drugs. I don't take drugs of any kind. I said, don't. Whatever you do not get hooked on drugs. I believe to this day that my son went on a tour with a group. He was down in Florida, and for some reason he decided that he did not want to do music anymore. He just quit, came home, and I think he has never told me this, but I know my son pretty well. And I think what he had done, the people he was with was using so much drugs that he must have. I would think he either saw somebody almost get messed up on it, or he must have tried it and got scared because of his home training, that he decided if he stayed in music, it would destroy him. So he decided to get out of it. Today he's an aeronautical engineer. So my point is, piggybacking on what Rudy just said, the vices out there are so awesome and overwhelming. They can eat you up and spit you out. So you must be prepared to deal with all of the good things in life that you want to be, and not get caught up in those vices like Rudy said, because it can kill you. Learn the music, and own your music, and I think and also take advantage of the internet now and realize that when you do something now, your music can go to the whole world, not just to one group of people. So, and your potential earnings can be vastly improved by going through that genre of music, or that vehicle of music, the distribution.
Yes, phenomenal. Okay, let's go to George. George, you're going to wrap it up for us.
Well, this is George. As far as current music is concerned, I think Rudy gave you some good advice when he told you about the book, This Business of Music. Also, I would suggest to people who are coming into the music business, even people who are already in it, read biographies of artists. Read Frank Sinatra's biography. Read Louis Armstrong's biography. Read Diana, because you learn what to do by the other artists' mistakes. And so you can learn about what not to do by reading biographies of music artists. And believe in yourself.
Yes.
And there are different degrees. Some people start music and they drop out. Then there are other people who just continue and until to the end. That's something that's inside the person. And if it's in you, you'll make it.
Phenomenal. That is so wonderful. I mean, this is great advice. And you know what? Great is the person who listens to it and runs with it.
Yeah.
That is so key. You got to take it and run with it. Well, I really hate to end our show. We've had such a great time with you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love all you guys, man.
It's been phenomenal. Well, Clarence, do you have anything you would like to say to our listening audience before we close out our show?
Yeah, I just want to tell the fellas I love them to death, and hey, take care of yourself. And they did everything I could have said.
Yes, indeed.
That's great. Andre, do you have any parting words for our guests?
Well, Stan, Bill, George, Rudy, Clarence, and my dear brother Lou, I want to thank you guys. I know you guys are having a funky good time out there in Phoenix, out there in all that cold weather.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, definitely want you guys to have a great time and really appreciate you coming on the show and taking out some time. And I know you guys have had a busy schedule since you've been there, so we really appreciate you. And this has been a learning experience for me too, because I didn't know that Lou was in the Army. I didn't know he was a singer, and I didn't know that you guys did the albums and stuff. So I've been knowing him all my life. So this has been a great experience. It really has, and you get to really know about people, even those that are really close to you, and you start finding things out about them, and they've been right there up under you. So I really appreciate it. And Lou, looking forward to seeing you again in the near future.
Okay, Andre, good to hear your voice, and God be with you.
Hey, Andre,
yes,
this is Rudy. I just had a brainstorm. As soon as we get established in our places, we're going to send you a couple of CDs so you can have them in your collection. Okay?
Hey, and we'll put it on the radio.
On the radio. Yes, we'll definitely put it on the radio. Definitely.
We'll put it on.
Yes. And that's what's wonderful about our radio station, because we play all genres of music. And we have a great listening audience who just uploads our app. We have a free app that's for iPhone and Android for your listening pleasure. It's 24/7. And we always invite our guests and all our listening audience, and those who are out there, to go to www.t25cl.com. Go to the radio, listen to the great music, and also purchase the albums and CDs for our artists. Great music out there, like Andre was saying, and we're going to be doing some phenomenal things coming up in this year. So I just want to thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, before you close out, brother, hold up, before you close out. This recording will be in your library at Rosalyn's Corner, probably the next hour or two. So, Lou and the gang, so anybody who didn't call in tonight, they can definitely listen to this recording again at any time. It'll be in our library. And you guys can always go back to the library and also review it as well.
Yes, exactly. So for George, for Bill Gaddis, even for Charlie, who wasn't here, Charlie Cannon wasn't here, but I'm sure he was here with us in spirit, okay? And for Rudy, for Stanley, for Clarence, and for Cousin Lou, from Rosalyn's Corner here at T25CL Galaxy Talk Radio. Everyone, you have a great good night.
Good night.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
As a 2 million